Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are staring into the fire. And I mean that quite literally. We are looking at a topic that I honestly think fits the definition of a historical paradox perfectly.
It really does. It's a complete study in contradictions.
Exactly. On one hand, you look at the numbers, and we are talking about one of the smallest major religions in the world today. I mean, depending on which census or demographic study you trust in our source stack, we're looking at somewhere between, 100,000 and maybe 200,000 people.
Globally, yeah.
Globally. That is a tiny, tiny community.
It's microscopic in the grand scheme of things. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, there are single football stadiums that could hold nearly the entire global population of this faith.
Right, it's just a drop in the ocean. But,
Yeah.
and here's the massive hook that got me, the thing that made me say we have to do this deep dive. It is arguably the most influential faith that most people know absolutely nothing about.
That's the paradox right there.
We are talking about the religion that, based on all the historical timelines we have, likely gave the world the concepts of heaven and hell, a cosmic devil, the idea of a messiah, the resurrection of the dead, and a final judgment for all humanity.
It's the bedrock. You could almost call it the architectural blueprint for the moral universe that billions of people, Jews, Christians, Muslims, inhabit today. Without this one specific ancient faith, the entire Western religious landscape would look, well, completely unrecognizable.
And yet, if you walk down the street and you ask the average person who Zarathustra was, they might.
But
What?
still.
They might think, you're talking about that Nietzsche book they pretended to read in college.
Right. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
Or maybe, if they're a film buff, the opening theme song to 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Which is deeply ironic because Nietzsche's character, his whole philosophy in that book, has almost nothing to do with the historical figure or his actual teachings. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite.
And we are definitely going to get into that irony later. But okay, let's unpack this. Curating this stack of research was fascinating because it really does feel like uncovering a hidden root system. Our mission today is to unpack Zoroastrianism, or to use the proper endonym from the texts.
Mazda-yazna.
What does that translate to?
It means the worship of wisdom, or more literally, the worship of Mazda. Mazda meaning the wise lord.
And the goal here is to figure out how a faith that is potentially 3,500 years old manages to feel so incredibly modern. I was reading through these sources, the Gathas, the analysis of the rituals, and we're talking about environmental protection, free will, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It feels very 21st century in its concerns.
It's startlingly relevant, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore the enigma of the founder, this incredible philosophy of a cosmic battle between good and evil, the very unique rituals involving fire and, believe it or not, vultures, and then the incredible survival story of the Parsi community.
We have a massive stack of sources today. We've got historical texts, theological breakdowns, analyses of migration legends like the Kisai Sanjan, and even some descriptions of festivals like Nowruz. So I think we should just jump right into the deep end. We have to start with the man himself.
The prophet, Zoroaster.
Or is it Zarathustra? Because I see both in the scholarly papers and it can get confusing. I feel like we need to clear up the name game before we proceed.
It's a classic case of things getting lost in translation over centuries. Zarathustra is the original name. It's Avestan, which is this ancient Eastern Iranian language, the language of the scripture itself.
Okay, so that's the authentic version. Where does Zoroaster come from?
That's what happened when the ancient Greeks got a hold of the name. Their language and alphabet didn't really have the T or she sounds in the same way, so they Hellenized it. They smoothed it out to Zoroaster. It's the same person, just filtered through a different culture.
Classic Greeks, remaking the world in their own image. But names in the ancient world, they usually meant something, right? They weren't just random labels like they can be today. What does Zarathustra actually mean?
This is where it gets really interesting and very grounding. You'd expect something mystical, right? Something like Keeper of the Sacred Flame or He Who Walks with the Stars.
I was definitely expecting something along those lines. Golden light was one I saw mentioned.
Yeah, there are some later interpretations that try to spin it that way, maybe out of a bit of embarrassment, but the strongest linguistic consensus, the most philologically sound one, is that it translates to something like He Who Manages Camels.
He who manages camels.
Or even more bluntly, just old camels.
Old camels. You're kidding. The founder of this profound philosophical system is named Old Camels.
It sounds funny to us, but think about the context. The suffix ustra is linguistically related to the Indo-Iranian root for camel. It points directly to his origins. He came from a nomadic, pastoral society on the steppes of Central Asia. In that world, having and managing camels meant you were a person of substance. It's like being called rich farmer or lord of the manor in a different context.
So it grounds him in reality. He wasn't some mythical demigod born from a lightning bolt.
Exactly. He was a guy from the Bronze Age who probably dealt with livestock. It tells us he understood stewardship, the value of animals, the harshness of the elements, the importance of protecting your herd. And all of these physical realities, these day-to-day concerns, became the metaphors for his later spiritual revolution.
He's a functioning member of an agricultural pastoral economy, not some hermit meditating in a cave.
Precisely. He was in the world, and his theology is for people living in the world.
Okay, so we have a guy named Old Camels. The next big question is, when exactly was he walking around managing these camels? Because looking at the research, the dates seem to be all over the map. And I mean really all over the map.
Oh, all over the map is putting it very lightly. Dating controversy is one of the fiercest, most long-standing debates in the field of Indo-Iranian studies. It is a genuine puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
Okay, so give us the spread. What's the range we're talking about?
Well, on one extreme, you have the classical Greeks. You have writers like Pliny the Elder, for instance, who wrote that Zoroaster lived 6,000 years before Plato.
6,000 years. Wait a second. That would put him, what, around 6,400 BCE? That's the Neolithic period. That's before writing in most of the world. That's before civilization as we really know it. Stone tools.
Right, it's an impossibly ancient date. Most modern scholars think the Greeks just fundamentally misunderstood something. They might have conflated the Zoroastrian concept of cosmic cycles, this idea that the world exists in a purely spiritual state for thousands of years before the physical world is created, with his actual human birth.
Or they were just exaggerating for effect.
That's also very possible. They wanted to frame him as the ultimate inventor of wisdom, and in the ancient world, older always meant better, more authentic.
Right, the ancient wisdom trope. Okay, so we can probably set the 6,000 BCE date aside as a misunderstanding. What about the tradition itself? What do the Zoroastrian texts say about when he lived?
The traditional Zoroastrian view, which is based on much later texts like the Bundahishn, places him 258 years before Alexander.
Okay, so 258 years before Alexander the Great conquered Persia. That would put him around the 6th century BCE. Roughly contemporary with Cyrus the Great, or maybe the Buddha or Confucius.
Exactly. It places him in that axial age, that period of incredible philosophical and religious ferment across the world. And that seems plausible, right? It feels like the right time for a major religious overhaul. And it aligns him with the rise of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. For a long time, that was the accepted date.
But not anymore.
But modern scholarship, particularly the linguists, have pushed back on that date. And they've pushed back hard. They look at the Gathas. Those are the 17 hymns that are attributed to Zoroaster himself, the oldest part of the scripture. And they compare the language of the Gathas to the language of the Indian Rig Veda.
The Rig Veda, which is the oldest Sanskrit text from ancient India.
Exactly. And the language of the Gathas and the language of the Rig Veda are so incredibly similar. They are practically dialects of each other. They share grammar, vocabulary, poetic meter. You can almost translate one into the other just by applying a few regular phonetic shifts.
Oh.
And since we know the Rig Veda dates to roughly 1500 to 1200 BCE, most scholars now use that as the anchor and place Zoroaster back there with it.
So he could be 1,000 years older than the traditional date.
Easily. We're likely looking at a figure from the late Bronze Age, living somewhere between 1500 and 1000 BCE, probably on the vast steppes of Central Asia, maybe in what is now Kazakhstan or Afghanistan or eastern Iran, long before the Persian Empire we know from the history books.
That makes the modern feel of his philosophy even more shocking. If he's writing about abstract ethics, free will, and environmental stewardship in 1200 BCE, he's so far ahead of the curve. He's writing this before the Iron Age has even really gotten started.
He is. He's operating in a world of chariots and bronze weapons, yet he's introducing these incredibly sophisticated concepts that won't become mainstream in the West for another millennium.
Okay, so let's try to piece together his life story from the sources. He's born into the Spatama family, and I read this really lovely legend that when he was born, he didn't cry. He laughed.
Yes, that's a defining myth. It's foundational to the psychology of the religion. Most babies cry because, entering the world is a traumatic experience. It's cold, it's bright, it's scary. But the story goes that Zarathustra laughed. And it's interpreted as a sign of his innate optimism and the fundamentally positive nature of the faith itself.
So from birth, the message is that life is good.
Yes. He saw the world not as a valley of tears or a place of suffering that you have to escape from, but as a place of joy and potential, a place worth fighting for. That's a stark contrast to some other major philosophies that view life as fundamentally characterized by suffering.
But his own life wasn't exactly a comedy, was it? It was a struggle.
Oh, a major struggle. About tradition, he was a priest in the old religion, the pre-Zoroastrian Indo-Iranian faith. This was a religion that involved a lot of complex ritual sacrifice, specifically of cattle, and the ritual consumption of a hallucinogenic drink called halma.
So it was very transactional. Appease the gods, get good things.
Very transactional. It was run by a powerful class of priests. The sources call them the Carapans. And then around age 30, he has his burning bush moment. His life changes forever.
The great revelation.
He goes to a river to fetch water for a sacred ritual during a spring festival. It's dawn. And as he's wading out into the water, he has a vision. He sees a shining being, a being of pure light who is known as Vohumana.
Which translates to good purpose or good mind. It's the personification of divine wisdom. And this being, Vohumana, leads his spirit into the presence of Ahura Mazda,
The wise lord.
the one wise Lord.
Yeah.
And this is the moment everything changes. In this vision, Zoroaster realizes that the complex polytheistic religion of his people is flawed. He realizes that there is one supreme, uncreated creator, Ahura Mazda, who is perfectly and completely good. And he realizes that many of the other gods people were worshiping, a group of beings called the Daivas, were actually agents of deception and chaos.
That word daiva sounds a lot like dava in Sanskrit, which just means God, or even the root of divine in English. It's the exact same linguistic root. And this is a huge moment, a great parting of the ways between the Indian and Iranian spiritual worlds. In India, the devas remained gods. In Iran, Zoroaster effectively rebranded them as demons. It's a linguistic split that marks the religious split. He basically went back to his people and said, hey, you know those beings you are sacrificing your best cows to? They aren't gods. They are liars and destroyers who want to ruin the world.
So he goes back to his people and says, everybody, stop sacrificing the cows. Stop getting high on Haoma. There's only one wise Lord, and you're praying to the wrong guys. I imagine that went over like a lead balloon.
It was a total disaster. He was completely rejected. The Carapans, the old priests, they hated him because he was threatening their entire livelihood. If you stop the sacrifices, the priests don't get paid, and they don't get the meat from the feast. He was a heretic, a dangerous revolutionary.
He was disrupting the whole economy.
He was. And so he was persecuted and forced into exile. He wandered for years. There's a sense of deep, profound isolation in his own hymns, the Gathas. At one point, he actually asks Ahura Mazda, "To what land shall I flee? Where shall I turn to go? None of the servants pay reverence to me, nor do the wicked rulers of the country."
That's incredibly human. We often think of these prophets as these confident, booming voices from the heavens. But here is a guy asking God, why is everyone ignoring me? Why does everyone hate me?
Exactly. It wasn't an instant success story by any means. The texts say it took him 10 long years to make his very first convert. And that first convert was his own cousin.
10 years for one convert. That's a slow start for a world religion.
It's a very slow start, but the turning point came when he traveled to the court of a king or a local chieftain named Vishtaspa.
And this is the Constantine moment, right? The ruler converts and then the religion finally takes off.
Eventually, yes, but even Vishtaspa needed a lot of convincing. The sources describe these great debates at the court. The old priests, the Carapans at Vishtaspa's court, tried to frame Zoroaster, accusing him of sorcery and black magic. He was actually thrown in prison.
So how did he get out? What convinced the king?
The legend is wonderful. The king's favorite horse, a prize stallion, had fallen mysteriously ill. Its 4 legs had been drawn up into its belly and it was paralyzed. None of the court physicians could cure it. Zoroaster, from his prison cell, sent word that he could heal the horse. He was brought before the king and said he would heal the horse 1 leg at a time, but for each leg, the king had to grant him a boon.
What were the boons?
For the first leg, the king himself had to accept the faith. For the second, the king's son had to convert. For the third, the queen had to. And for the fourth, the court had to expose the plot of the Carapans who had framed him. The king agreed, and Zoroaster healed the horse.
We can probably read that as a metaphor, right? The horse representing the kingdom and Zoroaster restoring its strength and stability.
Most likely, yes. But in a horse-centric Bronze Age warrior culture, Healing a prize stallion is an incredibly powerful act. Whatever the reality, once the king was on board, it became the state religion of that region. The message finally had protection.
And that allowed the message to spread.
Yes. Zoroaster reportedly lived to the age of 77. Tradition says he was murdered while praying at a fire altar. A priest of the old religion, a Carapan, snuck in and stabbed him in the back. So even in his death, he was part of that cosmic struggle between the new truth and the old ways.
Which brings us perfectly to the core of that struggle. Because when you really dive into Zoroastrian theology, it's not just God is good, it's a full-on cosmic boxing match.
That is a great way to put it. This is the heart of the philosophy. It's a concept called cosmic dualism, and it offers a solution to a problem that traditional monotheism has struggled with for centuries. The problem of evil.
Right. If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, then why is there cancer? Why do innocent children suffer? Why do natural disasters happen?
Exactly, the classic theological trilemma. If God is omnipotent, then he must be allowing evil to happen, which questions his goodness. If he is all good, then he must not be able to stop evil, which questions his power. Zoroastrianism has a very logical, slightly terrifying answer to this. It says, Ahura Mazda is the supreme creator, he is all good, the source of all that is positive. But, and this is the key, he is not currently unchallenged. His power is not absolute in this moment.
So in the blue corner, weighing in as the force for all creation and goodness, we have Ahura Mazda.
And in the red corner,
We have Angra Mainyu, also known later as Ahriman. This name translates as the destructive spirit or the hostile spirit.
Now, I want to be really clear here because this is where the Western Abrahamic lens gets foggy. Is Angra Mainyu like the devil in Christianity? Is he a fallen angel, a creation of God who went rogue? No, and that is the most vital distinction. In classical Zoroastrian theology, Angra Mainyu is not a created being. He is an independent, uncreated force of evil. He has existed for as long as Ahura Mazda has, co-eternal but opposite, dwelling in an abyss of darkness.
Whoa! So God Ahura Mazda isn't the only uncreated power in the universe.
In a sense, yes. Ahura Mazda is the only worthy power, the only creative power, but he is locked in a battle with an oppositional force that is purely destructive. It can't create anything new. It can only corrupt, decay, and destroy what Ahura Mazda has made.
Give me some examples.
Ahura Mazda creates life. Angra Mainyu counters by creating death. Ahura Mazda creates health. Angra Mainyu counters by creating disease. Ahura Mazda creates summer and warmth. Angra Mainyu creates the biting cold of winter. Ahura Mazda creates beautiful, fertile land. Angra Mainyu creates deserts and swamps.
So if you ask a traditional Zoroastrian, why does that earthquake happen, or why do mosquitoes exist?
They would say, because the battle is still ongoing. The enemy is attacking the creation. In fact, the ancient texts literally mention what they call crastra noxious creatures, things like frogs, snakes, scorpions, flies, and yes, mosquitoes are seen as counter-creations of Angra Mainyu.
I knew it. I knew mosquitoes were purely evil. I feel so validated right now.
You're in good company with Zoroaster there. In some of the older texts, killing these noxious creatures is actually considered a meritorious religious deed because you are literally removing the weapons of the enemy from the battlefield of the world.
But this leads to what I think is the most empowering part of the faith. Because this epic battle isn't just happening out there in the cosmos between two spiritual giants. It's happening right here.
In the microcosm.
Exactly. The universe is the macrocosm, the big battle. But every single human being is a microcosm of that same battle.
Yes. The struggle between Asha, which means truth, order, and righteousness, and Druj, which means the lie, chaos, and deceit, is being fought inside you every single day, every time you have a thought, every time you're about to speak. Every time you decide on an action, there is a choice.
And this is where free will becomes the central weapon.
It is the ultimate weapon. And this was so revolutionary for the ancient world. In many ancient religions, think of Mesopotamia, where humans were basically created to be slaves to do the grunt work for the gods. Or ancient Greece, where the fates determined your destiny no matter what you did. Humans were often just playthings of divine forces.
You sacrificed to keep the gods happy so they wouldn't flood your village or strike you with lightning.
But Zoroaster said, no. You are not a slave or a puppet. You are an active participant. You are a soldier. You have the freedom to choose. You can align yourself with Asha and the good, or you can align yourself with Druj and the lie.
And how do you help the good side win? It's not just about believing the right things, is it?
Belief is almost secondary to action. The central mantra, The phrase you will see on every Zoroastrian website, carved into temples in every prayer book, is Humata Hukta Farshta.
Good thoughts, good words, good deeds.
It sounds so simple, almost like a cliche you'd see on a motivational poster. But the theology behind it is incredibly heavy. It implies that every time you choose to think a good thought or speak a kind word or perform a charitable deed, you are not just being a nice person. You are actually adding power to Ahura Mazda's side of the cosmic ledger. You are physically strengthening the forces of light.
So you aren't just following rules to get yourself into heaven.
You are a soldier in a cosmic war, and your weapon is your morality.
That is surprisingly motivating. It gives everyday mundane actions a real cosmic significance. If I decide to help my neighbor carry their groceries, I'm metaphorically punching Angra Mainyu in the face.
That's exactly it. And it validates the material world. Zoroastrianism is not an ascetic religion that tells you to retreat to a monastery and meditate on nothingness to escape the world. It says the material world is good. Ahura Mazda created it as the battlefield. So your duty is to go out, be productive, have a family, farm the land, create wealth, and be happy.
Being miserable is actually helping the other guy.
In a very real sense, yes. Despair, sloth, depression, ascetic self-denial, these are seen as tools of Angra Mainyu. He wants you to give up. He wants you to think the world is pointless and corrupt. Joy, prosperity, hard work, and charity are divine acts. When you are happy and productive, you are reflecting the nature of the Creator and helping to heal his world.
I love that. It practically turns happiness into a moral duty. Okay, so we have the two big players, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. But it's not just them, right? There's a whole spiritual hierarchy. I was reading about the term Amisha Spentus. They sounded a lot like archangels to me.
They are very similar to archangels, and many scholars think this is likely where the Jewish and later Christian and Islamic concepts of archangels evolved from. Amisha Spenta means holy immortal or bounteous immortal. There are 6 of them, or sometimes 7 if you count Spenta Mainyu, the Holy Spirit of Ahura Mazda as the first.
And they seem to do double duty, right? They represent abstract concepts and they protect physical things in the world.
Exactly. This is that beautiful blend of the abstract and the physical that runs through the whole religion. For example, you have Vohumana, who we've met. He means good mind, but he is also the divine guardian of cattle and all beneficent animals.
Okay.
Then you have Ashavahishta, which is best righteousness or truth, and he is the guardian of fire. Then there is Spenta Armaiti, who is holy devotion, and she is the guardian of the earth itself.
So if you pollute the earth, you aren't just making a physical mess, you're committing an offense against an archangel.
You are offending holy devotion herself. It's a powerful eco-theology that was formulated thousands of years ago. Pollution of the core elements, earth, air, fire, and water, is considered a serious sin because it is a direct attack on the pure creation. It's seen as aiding Angra Mainyu in his quest to corrupt the perfect world. If you poison the water, you are attacking the creation of the Amesha Spenta Harvatat, who represents wholeness and protects water.
It connects ecology to morality in such a direct and powerful way. Beyond the Amesha Spentas, there are also the Yazatas. What are they?
The Yazatas are the adorable ones, or those worthy of worship. You can think of them as lesser divinities or angels, helpers of Ahura Mazda and the Amesha Spentas. There are dozens of them.
Like Mithra. I've definitely heard of Mithra.
Yes. Mithra is the most famous one. He's the Yazata of covenants, of contracts, of light, and by extension the sun. He is the one who ensures that people keep their promises. If you break a contract or lie, you are offending Mithra. He later got so popular that the Roman army created a whole separate mystery cult around him, but he started right here as a Zoroastrian divinity.
Okay, so it feels monotheistic at the top one supreme creator, but with a rich pantheon of helpers.
That's a good way to describe it. And then there's the Fravashi. This concept broke my brain a little bit when I was first studying it. It's like a soul, but not exactly. It's a fascinating and quite complex idea. A Fravashi is like your guardian spirit, or a higher double. Every human being has one. It's a pre-existing divine spark that existed in the presence of God before you were born, and it will continue to exist after you die. Its job is to guide you through life.
Okay, so it's a guardian angel that's also part of me.
Yes, but here's the kicker. The Fravashi remains perfectly pure, always. Even if you, the human person with your free will, choose to be a total villain and live a life of wickedness, your Fravashi remains untainted by your choices.
So it's the part of you that never falls, your perfect potential.
Exactly. It's your divine blueprint. It stands in the presence of Ahura Mazda while your earthly soul, the Irvin, struggles down here on the battlefield. The hope is that when you die, your Irvin has lived a good enough life that it can joyfully reunite with its pure Fravashi. It's this incredibly comforting idea that there is a perfect, eternal version of you that is always cheering you on.
That's a beautiful concept. Okay, from the beautifully conceptual, we need to talk about the beautifully physical. We need to talk about the fire, because one thing about Zoroastrians, it's fire temples, and I've heard people call them fire worshippers for centuries.
Which is a label they strongly and rightly reject. They do not worship the fire.
Right, let's clear that up definitively.
The best analogy is to think of a cross in a Christian church. Christians don't worship the two beams of wood. They worship what the cross represents, the sacrifice and resurrection of Christ. For Zoroastrians, fire is the supreme symbol of purity. It is light, it is warmth, it is energy, it doesn't corrupt. It is the most perfect physical representation of Ahura Mazda, the light of wisdom on earth.
So when they pray facing the fire, what are they doing?
They're focusing their mind on truth, on Asha. The fire is a focal point for prayer, a constant reminder of the divine presence in the world.
And the temples themselves, the Agiary or Atashkada, they aren't just lighting a match in a fireplace. There's a serious science to maintaining these fires.
Oh, it's an incredibly complex ritual science. And not all fires are equal. There are different grades of consecrated fire.
Grades of fire, like good, better, best.
Exactly. The lowest grade is the Atashdadga, which is basically a household fire, the fire of the law court. Any individual can tend to it. Then you have the Atashadaran, the fire of fires, which is consecrated by collecting fire from the homes of 4 different classes of society: a priest, a warrior, a farmer, and an artisan. It requires 8 priests to consecrate. But the highest grade, the holiest of all, is the Atash Beram, the victorious fire.
And making an Atash Baram sounds like a quest from a fantasy novel. I was reading the list of requirements in our sources. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
Yeah.
To create an Atash Baram, you need to ritually collect and purify fire from 16 different sources, representing all aspects of creation and human society.
16. Run us through some of the more surprising ones.
Well, you need fire from a baker's oven, a potter's kiln, a blacksmith's forge, a brewer's distillery, all representing the trades. You need fire from a king or a governor's house, representing authority. You need fire from a shepherd's hearth. But then it gets strange. You need fire from a cremation pyre.
Wait, a cremation pyre?
Yeah.
But a dead body is considered the ultimate source of pollution.
Exactly. So that fire is considered highly impure, and it has to undergo the most intensive purification ritual, which can involve over 900 steps of consecration. And the hardest one to get, you need fire caused by lightning striking the earth.
You have to go out and catch lightning fire.
Yes. In ancient times, priests would literally wait for thunderstorms, look for a lightning strike on a tree, and then carefully kindle a new fire from that broken wood. It's about bringing the fire of the heavens down to earth.
And once you gather all 16 of these fires, you don't just dump them together in a pit.
Absolutely not. Each of the 16 fires has to go through its own elaborate, lengthy purification ritual. They hold a ladle containing a bit of holy fire over the mundane fire, and they let the radiant heat ignite the fuel in the ladle without the flames ever touching. They do this dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. The entire process of establishing an Atash Baram is a massive undertaking that takes a team of priests up to a year to complete.
How many of these are there in the world?
There are only 9 of them in the world right now. 8 are in India and 1 is in Iran. They are the cathedrals of the faith.
And once it's lit, it never goes out.
Ideally, never. Some of these fires have been burning continuously for centuries, carried from place to place during migrations. The priests, the mobeds, feed the fire with sandalwood 5 times a day, corresponding to the 5 daily prayers. And when they approach the inner sanctum, they wear these white cloth masks called padan over their mouths and noses.
Why the masks?
To prevent their breath, their saliva, from polluting the sacred fire. Human breath is seen as carrying impurities. The fire must be kept absolutely pure. It's a sign of profound respect.
That dedication to purity governs their whole life. And it starts young, right, with the Navjot ceremony.
Yes, the initiation. It's usually performed between the ages of 7 and 15. It's the moment a child officially joins the community and takes on the responsibilities of the faith. They are given their spiritual armor, the the sudra and the kushti.
The Tudor is the undershirt.
Yes, a white muslin undershirt, always worn next to the skin. It has a tiny little pocket sewn into the front neckline. It's called jirban, which means the pocket of good deeds.
A literal pocket.
It's symbolic. The idea is that you are supposed to mentally fill it every day with your good thoughts, words, and deeds. It's a constant reminder of your life's purpose. And then they get the kushti.
The sacred cord.
A long, sacred cord made of 72 threads of pure lamb's wool. The 72 threads represent the 72 chapters of the yasna, a core part of the scripture. They tie and untie this cord around their waist several times a day while reciting prayers. It's a constant physical reminder, a tactile check-in of their commitment to the faith.
I like that. It's not just an abstract idea in your head. You're physically tying the commitment around your waist.
Yeah.
It grounds the theology in the body.
It absolutely does. It makes the abstract tangible.
Now, speaking of the tangible, we have to pivot to something that I think shocks a lot of Westerners. We've talked about how fire and earth are sacred and must not be polluted. And that leads to a very specific, very practical problem when someone dies.
Right. This is where the eco-theology hits a practical and, for some, a difficult wall. If you believe the earth is the sacred creation of the archangel Spenta Armadi, you cannot bury a dead body in it. Why? Because a corpse is seen as decaying and full of pollution. Specifically, it's believed to be infested by the corpse demon Nasu.
And if you believe fire is the pure symbol of God, you certainly can't cremate the body.
That would be the ultimate act of defilement, polluting the most sacred element. And for the same reason, you can't consign a body to the water.
So, no burial, no cremation, no burial at sea. What do you do with the body?
You look up. You look to the sky. The traditional solution is exposure to the elements in a structure called a dakma, which the British later called a tower of silence.
These are those open-air circular stone amphitheaters you see on top of hills and some pictures from Iran or India.
Yes, exactly. They are built on high ground, away from population centers. And the logic, when you remove the modern cultural squeamishness, is actually quite brilliant from an ecological standpoint. The body is carried up to the tower and laid out on a stone platform under the open sun, exposed to the elements and to birds of prey, specifically vultures.
It sounds gruesome to our modern sanitized sensibilities, but the efficiency is undeniable.
It's incredibly fast and clean. A healthy flock of vultures can strip a body down to clean bones in less than an hour, sometimes in just 30 minutes. The flesh is gone, so it doesn't rot, it doesn't spread disease into the soil or water. It re-enters the food chain. The bones are then left to be bleached and purified by the powerful sun, and eventually they are swept into a central pit where they mix with lime and slowly, harmlessly disintegrate back into their constituent minerals.
So nothing pollutes the sacred elements of earth or fire.
Nothing. It's the ultimate green burial. It feeds nature and leaves almost no trace.
And there's a ritual with the dog involved, too. The sources mentioned a four-eyed dog, a dog with glasses.
Laughs. No, not quite. It's a specific type of dog, one with 2 spots of a different color above its eyes, making it look like it has 4 eyes. It's believed that this dog has the ability to see spirits and perceive evil. In a ritual called sagdid, meaning the dog's gaze, they bring the dog to look at the corpse. Its gaze is thought to help drive away the Nasu demon of corruption and to confirm that life has truly departed. Dogs are held in extremely high regard in Zoroastrianism, seen as righteous and protective animals.
But there is a massive tragic problem with this entire system today, especially in India, where most Zoroastrians live.
A devastating, unintended environmental crisis. Starting in the 1990s, the vulture population across the Indian subcontinent crashed. And I don't mean it declined a little bit. We're talking a 99.9% decline in some species. They were virtually wiped out.
Why? What happened?
Diclofenac. It's an anti-inflammatory drug, a painkiller that was widely given to cattle. When vultures, as scavenger birds, ate the carcasses of cattle that had been treated with this drug, it caused immediate and total kidney failure in the birds. They died by the millions.
So the towers of silence went silent. The vultures stopped coming.
Exactly. The bodies were not being consumed. They were just lying there, rotting in the sun. It became a crisis of faith, of sanitation, of identity. The community had to adapt, and it has been incredibly difficult. Some towers of silence have installed huge solar concentrators, basically giant mirrors that act like magnifying glasses, to use the sun's heat to dehydrate the bodies more quickly.
And what about other options?
Others are reluctantly moving toward electric cremation, but this causes a huge and painful rift in the community between the traditionalists who say this is a terrible sin against the fire and the reformists who say we have no choice, this is the most practical and least polluting option available to us now.
That is a tough, tough spot to be in. It's a case where modern, man-made ecological disaster clashes with an ancient ecological faith.
It truly is.
Speaking of tough spots, let's talk about how the Zoroastrians ended up in India in the first place. Because this isn't their ancestral homeland. The vast majority of them aren't in Iran anymore. They're known as the Parsis.
Right. And the name Parsi literally just means Persian. It tells you where they came from.
So we have to go back in the timeline to the 7th century CE. The Sassanid Empire, the last great Zoroastrian empire of Persia, is conquered by the invading Arab armies.
And with that conquest, Islam becomes the dominant political and religious power in the region. Zoroastrianism goes from being the proud state religion of a massive empire to a persecuted minority faith. They face special taxes, the jizya, social pressure to convert, and occasional bouts of violence. Fire temples were extinguished or turned into mosques, so a small group of faithful decided to flee to preserve their religion.
They got on boats, sailed across the Arabian Sea, and eventually landed on the coast of Gujarat in India. And this leads to my absolute favorite story in the whole research stack, the sugar in the milk legend, the Kisai Sanjan.
It's such a beautiful and defining myth for the community. So the story goes that the refugees arrive in their boats off the coast of Sanjan. The local Hindu king, a man named Jati Rana, is wary. He sees these foreign people, priests and warriors. He doesn't know what to do. So he sends a messenger down to the shore with a glass of milk filled to the absolute brim.
The message being, "My kingdom is full. There is no room for you here." A very polite but firm rejection.
Exactly. No words, just the full glass. The Zoroastrian head priest, their dastur, takes the glass. He doesn't spill a single drop. Instead, he takes a pinch of sugar, or in some versions of the story, it's a gold ring or a coin, and he gently drops it into the milk. It dissolves without causing the milk to overflow. He then sends the glass back to the king.
The message being,
"We won't displace anyone. We will blend into your society seamlessly, and we will make your kingdom sweeter and richer for our presence."
that is some smooth diplomacy right there.
And it worked. The king was so impressed by this clever and peaceful reply that he granted them asylum, but on a few conditions.
What were the conditions?
They had to agree to adopt the local language, which was Gujarati. The women had to adopt the local dress, the sari, and they had to lay down their weapons and agree to never proselytize or try to convert anyone. And they agreed to all of it. And man, did they ever sweeten the kingdom. The Parsi success story in India is just wild.
It really is. Despite remaining a tiny, tiny minority, they never broke their promise, never tried to convert others, and largely kept to themselves. They became absolute titans of Indian industry, commerce, and culture. Especially during the British Raj, they were often the intermediaries, the entrepreneurs. They built ships, they mastered
The
trade.
Tata family is the prime example.
Right. Tata Steel, Tata Motors, which now owns Jaguar and Land Rover,
Yeah.
Air India, the famous Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. I mean, they basically built a huge chunk of the infrastructure of modern India.
And the Godrej family, another massive conglomerate making everything from locks to appliances, and they're known for their massive philanthropy, which goes right back to that core idea of good deeds. There's a strong belief that wealth is to be used to help society.
And it wasn't just in business, but in the arts and sciences, too.
Absolutely. You have Homi Bhabha, the father of India's nuclear program. You have Zubin Mehta, the world-famous orchestral conductor. And, of course, the most famous Parsi of all time, though many people don't even realize he was one.
Farrokh Bulsara.
Known to the rest of the world as Freddie Mercury.
The frontman of Queen was a Parsi boy, born in Zanzibar, educated in India.
And if you look at his funeral, despite his wild rock and roll lifestyle, it was conducted by Zoroastrian priests according to the ancient rites. He stayed connected to his roots. His sister has said in interviews that his flamboyance, his drive to live life to the fullest, was part of that good thoughts, good words, good deeds energy, that joy is a virtue.
It's fascinating how the sources make a clear distinction between the Parsis and the Iranis, right?
Yeah.
They're both Zoroastrian, but they're different groups in India.
Yes, that's an important distinction to make. The Parsis are the descendants of that first wave of refugees who migrated over 1,000 years ago. The group known as Iranis in India are Zoroastrians who migrated much, much later, mostly in the 19th and 20th centuries, fleeing later waves of persecution in Qajar, Iran. So they have slightly different food, different dialects of Persian, different customs, but they share the same core faith.
Okay, let's lighten the mood a bit and talk about festivals. Because if you're a Parsi or an Irani Zoroastrian, the calendar is a celebration of creation.
It certainly is. And the biggest, most important day of the year is Nowruz.
New Year.
The Persian New Year. And it isn't just on January 1st. It happens at the exact astronomical moment of the spring equinox. It's a celebration of rebirth of light defeating darkness, of spring defeating winter. In Zoroastrian tradition, it celebrates the creation of fire.
And the central part of the celebration is the half-sin table.
Yes. Haft means 7, and sin is the Persian letter S. So it is a table beautifully decorated with 7 symbolic items that all start with the letter S in Persian. Each one has a deep meaning.
Run us through some of the highlights.
Well, you have sabsa, which is wheat or lentil sprouts grown in a dish that represents rebirth and new life. You have seb, an apple for beauty and health. Sir, which is garlic, for medicine and health. Sirke is vinegar for age and patience because vinegar takes time to ferment. And samanu is a sweet pudding made from wheat germ, which represents fertility and affluence. It's a whole sensory table meant to invoke blessings for the new year.
And there's a sort of Santa Claus figure, too.
Yes. Amu Nowruz, which means Uncle New Year. He's a traditional figure, an old man with a white beard who brings gifts to children. He predates Santa Claus by centuries, maybe even millennia. He's often accompanied by a character named Haji Firuz, a cheerful figure with a blackened face who plays a tambourine and sings to announce the arrival of the new year.
It all connects back to that idea of joy being a sacred duty. Now, Readers is a pure celebration of life, but there's also a time set aside for the dead right before it, isn't there?
Yes. The last 10 days of the year are called the Muqtad, or Hamasbath Medium. This is the time for remembering the Fravashis of your ancestors. It's believed that their spirits come down to visit their homes during this period. So you clean the house, you light lamps, you offer flowers and fruit and water. It's very similar in spirit to All Hallows Eve or the Mexican Dia de los Muertos. It's the idea that the veil between the worlds is thin, and you want your home to be a clean, beautiful, welcoming place for the spirits of your loved ones.
So we've covered the history, the theology, the rituals, but now we need to land the plane on the so what. Why does this ancient, tiny religion matter to someone who isn't a Zoroastrian? You hinted at the beginning that this is the first flame that may have lit many others.
This is where we connect the dots to the bigger picture of world history. Think about the timeline again. The Jewish people were conquered and exiled to Babylon in the 6th century BCE. Their temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, their kingdom was gone, they were captives.
And then, in 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great of Persian, who was almost certainly a Zoroastrian or heavily influenced by its ideas, conquers Babylon.
He conquers Babylon, and he does something unprecedented. He frees the captive peoples, including the Jews. He allows them to return to Jerusalem, and he even helps fund the rebuilding of their temple. He is the only non-Jew in the entire Bible to be called Messiah, or Anointed One.
That's in the book of Isaiah. So for the next 2 centuries, the Jewish intellectual and religious elite lived under Persian rule.
Exactly. They were part of the Persian Empire. They interacted with Persian governors, Persian laws, and crucially, Persian ideas. And if you look at Jewish texts from before this contact, their view of the afterlife was, well, it was vague. You died and you went to a shadowy place called Sheol. Everybody went there, good or bad. It wasn't really a place of moral judgment.
And after the Persian period,
you start seeing the clear emergence of new concepts in Second Temple Judaism. The idea of a cosmic battle between good and evil, a final judgment day for all of humanity, the resurrection of the dead, a fiery place of punishment for the wicked and a paradise for the righteous. You see the development of a powerful adversary figure like Satan.
the similarities are just too strong to be a coincidence.
The vast majority of scholars agree it's not a coincidence. Zoroastrianism provided the theological template, the eschatology, the study of the end times that Judaism then adapted into its own unique context, and which was later inherited by its daughter religions, Christianity, and Islam. Even the idea of the Soshant, a future world savior who will be born of a virgin and who will defeat evil once and for all in the final days, that is a core Zoroastrian belief that predates other similar figures.
So in a way, billions of people today are cultural Zoroastrians without ever having heard the name.
You could absolutely argue that. The fundamental architecture of our Western moral universe, the cosmic struggle of God versus devil, heaven versus hell, the coming apocalypse and final judgment, was arguably first drawn up by Zarathustra on the Bronze Age steppes 3,000 years ago.
And there's also a philosophical legacy or a mislegacy. Pliny and the Greeks thought Zoroaster invented magic.
Right, which is where the word magi comes from, the 3 wise men in the Nativity story. The Gospel says they were magi from the East. They were almost certainly Zoroastrian priests, astronomers, who saw a star and came looking for a prophesied savior. But the Greeks misunderstood their religious rites as magic, which gives us the root for the words magic and magician.
And then much later, Nietzsche comes along and writes, "Thus spoke Zarathustra."
Which is the ultimate irony. Nietzsche chose the name Zarathustra because he viewed him as the first great moralist, the man who invented the whole binary of good and evil. And Nietzsche's project was to move beyond good and evil. So he used Zarathustra as a literary mouthpiece to symbolically undo his own creation. But the actual philosophy of Nietzsche's book, the Übermensch, the will to power, the death of God, has absolutely nothing to do with the historical religion of joy, order, and divine goodness.
It's just branding, really.
Yeah.
You picked a cool ancient name.
Pretty much.
So we have this massive global legacy, but the community itself, the one that has carried this flame for 3 millennia, is in serious trouble.
It is facing a demographic crisis. The numbers are dropping and dropping fast. In India, there are now fewer than 60,000 Parsis left. The average age is very high. Deaths far outnumber births each year.
Why is that? What are the drivers?
It's a perfect storm of factors. Low birth rates are a big one. The Parsi community is highly educated and urban, and like many similar communities around the world, they often prioritize careers, leading to later marriages and fewer children. There's also significant emigration to the West, where the small community scatters even further. But the big controversial one is the strict rule against conversion and intermarriage.
Explain that. What's the rule?
In traditional Parsi communities in India, under their personal law, if a Parsi man marries a non-Parsi woman, their children can be initiated into the faith. But if a Parsi woman marries a non-Parsi man, she is often considered to have left the community. Her children are not considered Parsi. They cannot have their Navjot ceremony. They are not allowed into the fire temples or to be buried in the towers of silence.
That sounds like a recipe for extinction, if your numbers are already critically low.
Many reformists say exactly that. They argue, we are dying out. We need to welcome the children of mixed marriages. We need to accept people who genuinely want to convert to our beautiful faith. But the traditionalists argue that Parsi identity is ethnic as well as religious. They fear that if they open the doors, their unique culture, the culture of the sugar and the milk, will dissolve and disappear into the vast ocean of India.
Is the fear of disappearing by dilution versus the fear of disappearing by attrition?
Precisely. And it is a painful, deeply emotional debate that is tearing at the heart of the community. There is a very real fear that in a few generations, they might be relabeled from a living community to a tribe, or worse, just cease to exist as a distinct group altogether.
And that would be a profound tragedy. Because as we've seen today, this is a faith that values the environment, that values personal responsibility, and that champions the joy of living a good life.
It is a faith that tells you that you matter, that your choices matter, that you are not just a speck of dust in the wind, but a warrior of light in a cosmic battle.
And that brings us to our final thought for today.
Yes. If we take anything away from this deep dive into the first flame, let it be this. In a world that often feels chaotic, confusing, or morally gray, Zoroastrianism offers a piercing clarity. It says the universe is locked in a struggle, but that the victory of good is inevitable.
But it's only inevitable if we choose to help make it so.
Exactly. God needs you on the team.
So here's the provocative question for you to mull over as you unplug today. If the battle between good and evil isn't just happening in the headlines or in ancient myths, but is being fought inside you, in your own mind, every single day, and if your good choices, your good thoughts, your good words, your good deeds actually strengthen the creator of the universe, how does that change the way you view your next small decision?
Does that extra bit of patience you show in traffic, that small act of kindness to a stranger, that decision to tell the truth when a lie would be easier, does it actually tip the cosmic scales? Zarathustra would say yes, it absolutely does.
Something to think about. This deep dive is produced by The Deep Dive. Keep digging.
And good thoughts, good words, good deeds.